We work together pretty well, right?
We do. We complement each other well.
What would you say your pros are? How do you get into the pros and cons? No, not pros and cons. Strengths and weaknesses. That's what it's called.
What are your pros?
Oh, brother. All right, episode 2. I thought we would start today first with some housekeeping stuff.
Okay.
We are obviously on YouTube. If you're watching this, then you know that. But we are also, as of this episode, when it drops, you can say drops for an episode, right?
Yeah,
It's not
I
just
think
for,
that's...
just for albums.
We can use it.
We can say it.
We're cool
When this
enough.
episode drops, we will be on Spotify podcasts and hopefully Apple iTunes. I'm waiting back. Is it Apple? It's Apple Podcasts now, I think.
Is it?
I think they changed it. Anyways, I'm going to get an email from them any minute, I'm sure, and they're going to approve our content, unless they don't, and then we'll just be on Spotify podcasts. But anyways, in the description of this video, I think we'll have links to where you can download it so that if you don't want to stare at our faces for 20 minutes or however long it is, you can listen to it in your car because that's what people do with podcasts.
Right, that's what I do.
That's what they do. Okay, perfect. We wanted to talk about how we work together and kind of shine a little bit of a light on that, specifically in running our businesses together. But then also, we run businesses together and then our businesses work together,
Yes.
right? As photographer and videographer.
We get asked a lot if there's tension having to work together and critique each other and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think it's a good topic.
Okay, well, maybe we should start at the beginning of our business life together. We started Ferguson Films, and at the time, I was doing initially shooting and editing, and then you came on as a shooter, but you really handled all of the client interaction and organization what we had at the time, right?
Yep. Booking weddings, all that kind of stuff, figuring out travel, all of that was my thing.
Yeah, that was your thing. And you are definitely better at writing emails and communicating and the client side of things, whereas like my strength was more of the editing side of things, right?
Yeah.
So how has that evolved over the year, I guess, would be an interesting thing. Well, maybe interesting. I don't know if they'll find it interesting, but
Yeah. So that first year of us kind of me branching out, you took on things that you hadn't really taken on before, and so did I.
Right.
And so that even became a year of what strengths do you have?
Right.
What
Figuring it
weaknesses
out for
do
you
you
now.
have? And what weaknesses do I have? Like, it really was a good time figuring that out. But we had to figure it out.
And before that, I had a full-time job.
Yes.
And so there was a period where I was working during the day and then coming home and working at night. And so you kind of out of necessity were handling all the client interaction stuff. And then when I went full-time, I had more time to do that stuff.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we want to share that embarrassing story of to give
Which
people an
one?
idea? Yeah. Well, my favorite is that, so we're moving.
Oh.
And we're going through the garage packing stuff, and I find this envelope in a box of mail, and I open it up and realize that it is a payment, the final payment that somebody sent us in check form for their film. There's a significant amount of money for that film.
That was like, when was it dated? Like a wedding we
It had been
shot.
at least a year and a half.
Yeah.
So somebody got a free wedding film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and good for them.
And we won't say who it is.
And we won't say who it is, but you know. And you, no, I'm kidding. But that was a good indication of like, we're
in over our heads.
Way in over our heads.
Yeah.
Not keeping track of payments, having no idea. And so obviously things have gotten a little bit better. A lot better, but we haven't missed any.
That was terrible.
Oh, man,
but
that's funny. Yeah.
lots to improve on.
Lots to improve on.
Yeah.
Set
we
the bar
have.
low. Yeah, and I think so. Yeah. So obviously we work together in the business, but then our businesses, like I said, work together. You're a photographer of weddings, and I shoot video in a lot of weddings. So I'm curious, you started as a videographer, and now you shoot photos. So what would you say is the biggest difference as you transition from going through the day through a videographer's eyes and then now going through the day as a photographer's eyes? Is there a big difference for that?
Yes, I would say it helped me big time because we worked with a ton of photographers. So really I got to see how a lot of photographers work and run the day. But it also allowed us to, I mean, obviously you both are getting what you need for your couple, but it's different. I mean, it's just video's going to be different than photos. So I just had different priorities video-wise than I did with photos. So I don't know if that was really your question.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings up a bigger point or a bigger conversation probably, which is how can a photographer and a videographer work together on a wedding day, right? Which is something I think we've each been asked about. I know I've certainly had lots of conversations with other videographers about photographers that are, you know, they're in my way or whatever. And I'm sure you've heard a lot from photographers.
Yeah.
So we've obviously, you're in the unique position to have done both. And then we've done a lot of weddings together. Let me start with this question. Is it possible for a photographer and a videographer to work together, stay out of each other's way, and both get everything they need to deliver to the couple?
Yes.
It is.
It is.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But it does require some communication up front and maybe even a little bit of...
compromise is kind of a strong word, but a little bit of compromise.
Absolutely.
And having another plan.
For the sake of the couple.
Right, exactly.
And I think
that's the point.
That's probably the thing that I feel like I've run into the most is that somebody has a certain way of doing things and they think this is what's best for my film or for my photos, ultimately for the couple. But in doing so, it's like I will box out any other vendor because I'm going to deliver this. And really, if I'm doing that and I'm hurting the photographer's flow, then the couple may get, maybe in my opinion, a better video, but will not get the same quality of photography that they hired,
paid for.
They paid for.
Yeah.
So are they actually getting a better experience for their whole day? I would argue no.
Yeah, I would too. Also, because that tension can be felt. So
absolutely,
you're not only are you boxing out other vendors, but you're creating kind of a tense, stressful situation for the couple.
Exactly.
And that's terrible. In my opinion, it's so unnecessary.
I think both of us feel a huge part of what we want to bring to a wedding day is not just the quality of product that we create, but also the quality of day we facilitate.
Totally.
And so it's important for both of us to create an experience for our couples that feels a certain way on the wedding day.
Yes.
That they're not... that we're not constantly pulling them out of what's happening to do this cool photo shoot or video. You know.
Which a lot of that, I would argue, goes into the product. Like their experience of the day completely affects how they look back on that video and those photos afterwards.
I think so.
They totally go hand in hand. If they are stressed out and feeling like, we're being pulled in 5 different directions constantly, they're going to look back on those photos and go, remember how stressed we felt?
Right, exactly.
You know? Yeah. And so I just think that's completely unnecessary. So it's vital to work with vendors because you said it. They're hiring both of you. They're hiring all their vendors to do what they do best. And it's totally possible to work well together. Yeah.
Well, let's dive into it a little bit. And for those of you who are watching this and are not super interested in weddings, or you're not here to learn about weddings, then fast forward a little bit or just bear with us. But I think that it's an interesting thing, and it goes into kind of how we have learned to work together, because it isn't always smooth, or at least it hasn't been in the past. I think it's been a lot better, but there have been rough parts where I'm a little irritated with you, or more likely you're a lot irritated with me of what I'm doing. And because I earned that irritation, I'm not saying that you because I'm an idiot. But anyways, so I think I guess how would you say, what's a few of the important things if you're gonna work well, photo, video, that we have learned working together?
Biggest thing is communication before things happen.
Yes.
So, during a wedding day, events are unfolding. There's going to be things that happen that you want to have a certain angle, or you want to be on a certain side. You have to talk about that and your plan beforehand and stick to your plan.
Yeah, that's a big one.
In order so that you're not in each other's shot. You're not getting in each other's way.
Yeah.
This is my plan. You know, I'm going to stand here, and as she comes down the aisle, I'm going to duck back this way, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
What do you usually do? Oh,
Right.
well, I usually do this, and those are going to conflict. So
Right.
maybe I adjust. Maybe I go,
Right.
you know what, I can get just as good of a shot over here.
Yeah.
You make a plan. You communicate.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, and we mentioned it already, but in order to make a plan, you have to be willing to adapt and compromise.
Yeah.
And so the best shot for me would be the camera in the center of the aisle shooting straight down to the couple. And I'd like a nice wide shot so I could see their feet and a little bit of the crowd's head. And do you know what that means? That means no one could go down my aisle and take a photo. And the thing is, that might not work for the photographer I'm working with. Sometimes they're like, oh, I've got a 70-200 and I'll stand right next to you and zoom in and shoot it. Okay, cool. Then I'll keep my camera here. But I have to be willing to go, okay, if all she has is a 50, or that's just the way that she does it, or he, doesn't have to be she, but then I've got to adapt. And I can do that. I can move my camera off to the side and raise it up and switch lenses and get an interesting shot that's still going to produce what I want to produce. But I have to be willing to say, okay, this is my plan A, but I got a plan B or C in the event that we're going to do things, we need to do things differently.
And really having the experience to know that your B and C is going to, like you said, your production value is going to be the same as A.
Right. And
it's not your like perfect ideal shot, but it's still going to be just as good in a different way. Yeah. And that's okay.
And you're right. It is so much based on experience and knowing, you know what, I need this lens in my kit because if I run into this situation, I need to be prepared for that. And I think that's what goes into experience for experienced photographer and videographer is it's not just, oh yeah, well I know how to shoot a wedding. It's when this and this happens, I have the tools I need to adapt,
right,
and still get what you're hiring me to get.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
And that takes time. I mean, that takes using the little amount of tools you have, working with those, building up to that. You know, we didn't start with all of our lenses and all the stuff.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah,
but
that's a good point.
It takes time. It takes experience to kind of build those things up. But you got to get really good at the tools you have.
Right.
With the tools you have.
So, how about for us? What have been some? I'm trying to think of some situations where we butted heads a little bit at a wedding.
Never.
It's never happened.
Honestly, with all the weddings we've shot together, I can think of maybe 2 times that we had sort of like some tense moments.
Sure. And I think part of that is because you can say, you're in my way and you need to move.
That's true.
And I can say,
right.
no, this is where I need to go. And we can work it out in a way that most professional vendors can't necessarily do.
Yeah, right. Because we're comfortable with each other. Right. And so there's not that oh, I just met you today.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not going to feel like...
And you shot enough video weddings to know, oh yeah, you absolutely can do it this way.
And I think the only tense moments we had was when, because you're doing video, you have way more equipment that you have to set up, especially when it comes to toasts and all that kind of stuff later in the evening.
Right.
Because you have lights set up and you've got all sorts of stuff. So like it takes you time to set those things up.
Yeah.
And sometimes the sunset session gets switched around. Sometimes it's like, okay, you know what? Dinner's running a little late or whatever. Let's go now. And then we'll come back, you know, and do toast right after. Yeah. Those types of situations have possibly been tense for us. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, wait, you have a ton of stuff you have to set up. And I wasn't considering that when I just was like, oh, yeah, let's go do the sunset session right now.
And I think that's a good thing. I think from a video side of things is being prepared for those kind of things, thinking through the day and being prepared. But then, as a photographer, being able to realize, hey, this is going to cost the videographer more on time down the road. Maybe I've got to set reception lights up and now I don't have time to do that. And so it's like, it's knowing, okay, if I make this big decision, it's real easy for you, but it might not be for me. And so it's just approaching that decision with some consideration. Yeah. And I think, when the photographer's like, this is what we're doing, you don't have a choice. Right. And when the photographer's like, hey, this is what's going to work best for the sunset, how can we make this work? Right. It's a different approach.
And that's what it is. It's being willing to listen. It's
Yeah,
just
for sure.
just being willing to bend a little bit and figure out a good plan together.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And it's those decisions that you're making all day long, just making them together.
Yep. Agreed.
I think one thing that's helpful to know is looking out for the other vendor. If like, hey, we're ready to read our vows,
Yeah.
and the videographer's off shooting something else.
Right.
Perfect. Let's get Ryan over here, or
Right. Let's make sure that this person's ready to go or
Yeah.
can be part of it.
yeah, that's
for
really
sure.
helpful. I mean, because you're working together to do your best work for the couple.
Exactly.
And so if you're going to ignore that and go, I want to get mine and I don't care what they can just fend for themselves.
Yeah.
You're doing the couple a disservice.
Right.
I think that's the point.
Yeah. How does the personal style, your stylistic approach to weddings affect? Because when we work together, I don't do a lot of posing of the couple. I don't have them twirl in a field or do anything like that. I really am looking for more of natural, real, genuine moments. And
Right.
so those happen a lot of times when the photographer is in between switching lenses. And
Sure.
so it makes working during portrait session pretty easy for me. But I know that's not the style of every videographer. Some people want to do some of that other stuff. Or photography wise, you're looking for a lot of candid, natural moments, whereas some people are looking for a lot more posed, dramatic, lighted. So how do you work with somebody whose stylistic approach is different?
I feel like it's making sure you have enough room in your timeline
Yeah.
and adjusting again. It's like, okay, I've got them in the spot. I want them to be this great location, whatever. Okay, I'm shooting, doing the things I need. And then it's like, it's always checking in. Like,
Yeah.
did you get what you need? Go for it. Like, you've got these 5 minutes or whatever. And it's just that kind of constant back and forth. So if he wants to or she wants to get something that I'm not necessarily going to get, I want to make sure they have that opportunity.
Definitely.
Obviously, like if they're wanting to take 30 minutes to where, it really hinders the timeline or something. 30 minutes is kind of a weird number, but to where
Yeah, I
it's like,
understand.
it's all, they have their own hour shoot and I have my own hour shoot. That doesn't make
That's
any
not gonna
sense
work,
at all. You're
for
doing
sure.
it together, but it's just sort of this like, okay, what do you need? Are
Yep,
you know, go for it. This is your time.
And then it's being respectful of like, oh, this is their time, so I'll get what I can, but I'm not gonna go, she's got him posed in this great spot, and I'm gonna go lens whack, which means I've got to be a foot in front of him and mess with my
Right.
lens, and now I'm not giving her space. Even though I'm letting her control the posing, I'm kind of being disruptive. And so
Sure.
it's knowing, okay, let her do her thing, and then either saying, can I jump in there for a second? Or when she kicks it back
Yeah.
to me to know, okay, cool, now I can do what I want to do.
It's just that check-in. It's
Absolutely.
just like,
I think
did you
if
get
all
what
you're
you
asking,
need?
Is everything cool? Are you getting what you need? Am I in your way? Let me know. That's sort of just open to that communication.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like that kind of back and forth is helpful to the couple. It's showing that you guys
Yeah.
are working together. You're
sure.
doing this together. So they're not feeling any weird tension between you.
Definitely.
Where, it's like, oh, but I really wanted to do this. Okay, well, I need to do this. I
Right.
mean, like,
Yeah.
that's the last thing you want to put on your
Definitely.
couple's plate.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, that communication and just checking in.
Yeah. I think everybody's had a bad experience, whether it's a photographer with videographers or videographers with photographers. And so it feels to me a lot of times people go into a wedding with their defenses up a little bit.
That's true.
And it's like from the get-go, I'm ready
My
to defend
defenses-
my
yeah,
territory.
yeah.
And that's just such a bummer way to start the day, and it's such a bummer way to work. And so
Right.
I think it's helpful too if there's even communication before the day. Hey,
That's
this is how
true,
I
yeah.
work. This is what I focus on. Let's work together, that kind of a
Right.
thing. And I think that always just that we can kind of like not go in ready for a fight and
Yeah.
being like, hey, how can we do this together?
Even that email, like you were saying, hey, this is how I usually do things. I'm
Right.
excited to collaborate with you,
sure. Yeah.
to make sure you get what you need.
Right.
That starting that is really good, and almost giving a reminder, like, can't wait to get what we need to get for
Yeah.
our couples or for our couple. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Almost
definitely.
like refocusing.
Yeah.
This is why we're doing this.
All right, so That's great, but there are going to be times where you're going to work with somebody who's just not interested in the give and take, and they're just going to do their thing, and no matter how many times you've tried to communicate, they're not having it.
Yep.
How do you still deliver what the client's hired you to do in those situations?
Yeah. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you will have set yourself up with a good timeline to where there's wiggle room for those types of situations.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you kind of have to be assertive. You have to sort of push back a little bit.
Right.
Because they hired you to do what you need to do. So it's after you've communicated, it's after you've done the things you need to do to try to create a good rapport, and they're not having it.
Yeah.
You have to push back a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's all for your couple.
Right. And it can be really hard. I've been thrown completely off where it's working with somebody who is just not, this is not working.
Yeah.
And it can like mentally kind of psych you out a
Totally.
little bit. So I think for me, it's helped to think through those times and know, okay, I'm working with somebody I haven't worked with before. If this is the case, how are we going to be extra prepared?
Yeah.
And so for us, it's like we're normally feeding off what the photographer's doing and posing for the portrait session. And if they're not going to do any of that, if they're going to be, we're doing this and you're not, then I have to be ready to go, what other moments during the day could we pull them aside? What other ways, or how can I coach them while we're going? And, thankfully, we've never had any situations where it's like we're straight up not talking or fighting, but I've definitely been in situations where it's like, this is really difficult and this is not
Not
easy
working
for
well.
for me to work. So I think the more you are talking to your clients and setting their expectations too, then as you get into the day, you've established what they can expect from you. And so then if you are kind of forcing them a certain direction that fits within those expectations, they're still understanding, oh yeah, this is what he kind of talked, we were going to do some of this or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you find out what's important to them
right
all before you even get to the wedding day.
Definitely.
And so it's kind of a matter of, in those disheartening kind of moments where it feels like, this person's really difficult to work with, you're refocusing on those things you've already talked about.
Right.
This is for the couple.
Right.
These are the things that's important to them, so I'm going to push on these things.
Right.
These other things, that it may not affect the film very much or whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to push back on those types of things. But sometimes it could even mean taking that vendor aside privately, not in front of your couple, and talking to them, hey, they hired me too. I know it's difficult. We've never worked together. But I really want to make sure I can get what I need too. I really don't want to step on your toes, but if we can just have a little bit, maybe there's a situation where that's necessary.
Definitely. Yeah, it could be. Absolutely. I think it's easy to be biased to the medium or the service you provide, right? I can think video is really the best format to capture and to relive your wedding day, right? And I can believe that. But it's when I take that attitude into a wedding day and think the video is the most important thing. Honestly, even if the couple told me, hey, we're hiring you, you're really the most important thing here. I just think that is the wrong attitude to have going into the day. Because they each discipline in the wedding day, the wedding planner and the DJ and the photographer and the videographer, they are all providing a service for the couple. And to go into it thinking that my service is really the most important, that's exactly the kind of attitude that's gonna cause friction all day long with everybody you work with. You have to go in saying, I'm part of a team. And those have been by far the best weddings that we've shot is when all of the vendors keep referring to each other as a team. We're the team. We're all in this for the couple, and that's always going to be a better situation. And I get the best stuff in that. Even in the weddings that you would look on paper, oh, you're compromising more with the photographer. I'm so happier with what I've gotten because we've created an environment that's letting kind of the creativity flow, and we're getting the best work.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that was a lot of wedding talk. If you're watching this or listening to this and you're not in weddings, sorry. But hopefully that was a little bit of an indication of how we work together and how we work with other people, and it's communication is really the most important thing. Okay, so I think another aspect of us working together is as we are both creative and we are both doing something that is really subjective to us individually, what is it like when we have to give each other opinions creatively? When I show you a film and say, what are your thoughts? Because that can be difficult.
Yeah, we've had some tension there for sure. Because when you are doing something creative, it's a piece of yourself that you're putting out there.
Yeah.
It's like, it almost feels like I'm exposed and vulnerable. And so we both have to be really smart with how we critique each other. But I think critiquing each other is so important.
So important.
We need it.
And I have found when I've sent work out to other people, hey, would you look at this and give me your criticism? Number one, most people just want to say, it's awesome, right? Even though I know it's not awesome. Or two, you're putting them in a spot where, especially if they're not video people, maybe they are, but you're asking for them to say something, so they're going to say something.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then all the time I get the sense of like, do you actually feel this, or you just feel like you had to come up with something? So maybe this is a little long, and you're like, what? So there is no better person that critiques my work than you by far, but it can be difficult for me when I finish something and I feel good about it, and to have you go, because I know you're not going to lie to me. I know you're not going to be like, oh, it's really good. Yeah, send it off. You're going to tell me what you feel.
And if I do lie to you, you know.
Oh, I always know. You're like, yeah, no, I know it's good. I'm like, no, it's not. But how does that, like, how do you approach that when I want you to show me something and you see it and you're like, this needs work?
I think I need to be, I've had to be kind of delicate is such a weird word, but I need to be
fragile.
No, that's not what I mean. I need to be smart. I need to be respectful, and I need to be smart in how I communicate that. You're asking for my opinion, but I need to understand where you are in the project.
Right.
If it's totally done, I'm not going to tear it apart and go, wow, music was horrible.
Over. Sure.
Right. Which usually you're bringing me along in the process, so it's not
on.
right. But I take that into account. And then I'm weighing like, okay, how big is this thing that I've noticed? Is it just me and it's not really because it's subjective?
Yeah.
So I weigh that all the time. But I just think it's being, and I hope I've been respectful with how I say those things. But like,
Definitely.
That's the goal, is just being kind and respectful with how and understanding there's a greater goal to better each other.
I think there is. You're right. And I think it can be easy to think, look, I don't want to step on any toes, so I'm just going to be like, oh, it's great. Yeah, it looks really good. Or oh, this and this. But you can feel that when somebody's looking at your work. Like you said, you're kind of exposed. And so you can feel if they're sort of like, I don't want to bother you. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's great. Just do it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good. And that's not helpful. And then also if it's just too brash or too, kind of like, change this sucks, that's terrible.
Yeah.
You really are. It is such a weird thing to have somebody review your creative work, because it does feel so personal.
Totally.
And so yeah, it is. I think that's something that we've learned. I have had to learn that I can't take personal offense. It sounds so dumb, but I can't take personal offense when somebody has critiqued the work, specifically when you have been like, this isn't working, and this is too repetitive, or this soundbite doesn't flow. And it can be like, I'm mad. I'm not even mad at you. I don't know who I'm mad at. I'm just mad. I'm mad that it isn't perfect or something. And it can be such a like childish response, but it's real. Like there is that feeling of like, oh, I spent so much time on this piece, you know what I mean? And so anyways, I think that has been something that we've had to learn, is how to accept criticism, give criticism, and then ultimately you have to trust the person who's giving you the criticism.
Yes.
And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Is to be like, I know when you look at something and go, it's done, then I feel the most confident when it's done.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's also offering positive encouragement.
Yeah.
It's not just like picking apart, oh, you shouldn't have done this and blah, blah, blah. Like being able to balance that with, I love this. This is awesome. This looks really good.
Yeah.
Like you said, when I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Like that's a real,
Definitely.
opinion.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right, and that is giving pause, saying what you love. I mean, this sounds like junior high stuff, but saying this was really good.
Yeah.
This is what I would change. That feels so much different than just like you need to change these 3 things.
Right.
You know. So I think that's been something that we've really had to kind of work through.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to working together, really it's any workplace, any personal relationship, it requires communication.
Yeah.
It requires respect and humility.
Yeah.
The willingness to go, I'm going to just quiet myself and listen
Yeah.
and meet you where you're at.
Yep.
I think that's just...
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think those are things that we've learned over the course of working together, and things that we're still
learning
and being
totally.
refined in, for sure. But I think those are the key parts of being able to work with anybody, especially your spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It helps that I like you.
I like you too.
Yeah, cool. Glad to hear it. All right, land it.
Me?
Yeah, you land it. Get us out of this.
I think we've talked a lot.
Yeah, we have.
I think that wraps up
That
episode
wraps
2.
it up.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the Dining Room Table. Or listening.